Many of you have heard the term Gnosticism. Most people who are interested in a spiritual path, they're quite intrigued by it. As you know, Gnostics or Gnosticism was a very early Christian group. Some people think it even started like 50, 60, 70 years after Jesus, and even that it really contained the secret teachings of Jesus. As you know, Jesus says, I talk to people in parables, but to you, the closest one, I tell you things which they could never understand. So that's for your ears only. The public at large would not be able to follow what I'm really telling you. So the Gnostics believed that they had those teachings with them, and that's what they were passing on from generation to generation. Now, there were many schools of Gnosticism, let's say quite a few, and many people give up studying it or going deeper into it because they get confused by different terms and so forth, and they just think, well, that is getting a little bit too complex for me. So what I want to do today is just to give you an essence of what it really is and what it wants to bring you to. And I will use very simple words, so that it can become more of a reality. I like to add that there is a great scholar, a university teacher of early Christianity, Elaine Pagels, who has written a very good book on Gnosticism, the Gnostic Gospels. So I very often would advise people to go and read it because it's also a very good introduction. Now, the Gnostics were persecuted by the nascent Catholic Church, the upcoming church, because at the very beginning of Christianity, for hundreds of years, many of you will not realize, but there were many Christian groups. And at the end, when the Roman Empire took over it, they say, guys, try to come to an accord together and let's just have one form of Christianity so that the emperor can easily relate to it. So there's the emperor and there is the religion, and it's just one. So you all have to come together and come to a conclusion. And basically at the end it became, the church was created together with the Roman Empire, and they just proceeded to butcher, really, and I'm not exaggerating, every other Christian group. And the Gnostic Gospels not only were burned, but anyone who would possess a non-canonical gospel or Christian scripture could be burned alive and sometimes even skinned alive. And read your history, it sounds pretty gruesome, but that is the reality. Now, one thing that the church hated about the Gnostics is, let's start with point one. According to them, the God of Jesus, and as you see in most of his talks, he never used the term God, Yahweh, or so forth, but he uses Abba and Father, which is a very endearing, very loving, something that is quite close to you. He could have said Mother, as well, but it's that kind of close, loving, gentle relationship. So the Gnostics believe that the divine essence of which Jesus was talking was not the Yahweh of the Old Testament, not the God of the Old Testament. They said that was a semi-God, and who was cruel, who was dictatorial, who was supposed to talk to people but tell them to do some pretty gruesome stuff. And actually the mission of Jesus was to free us from the demiurge, the semi-god. And that's why he taught a path that was quite different. Of course, he didn't want it to be killed on day one, as soon as he started preaching, so he could not truly express it, because he would have been dead in a few days. But, he did say things that Moses, that was the ancient path, gave you the bread of the earth, but I'm giving you the bread of heaven. I'm bringing you something much higher, you see. I'm even before Abraham. We look at the Gnostic meaning of that, which is not so much saying that I'm God and you are not, but I'm just saying my essence, your essence, that is something that goes above all beliefs and system and is based on love. He even, when he was talking, you cannot put old wine into new wine, and you cannot put new wine into old wine, you cannot sew an old piece of garment into a new dress, and so forth. He was clearly saying you can't mix these two things, Now, he couldn't go and say, guys, your stuff is no good, So even in the great Sermon on the Mount that we'll be seeing in great detail, he couldn't go and say, look guys, what I'm bringing is something totally new. Of course not. So he clearly said to them, to tranquilize them, look, I'm not denying what you were following. That is fine. But let me tell you that very thing I'm taking to a higher level. And that's why then he could go and say, you have heard, said like this, but now I'm telling you, let's go a step higher. Let's get really close to the divine, and let's get close to the divine from the heart. Okay, so it was about opening the heart of people, and from there you could find your path to salvation. So that is the very first thing of the Gnostics. They did not believe in this kind of Abrahamic God, who is a personality that talks, that shouts, that screams, that punishes, that gets angry, you see. And most of them were, I think, closer to a kind of a karmic concept. You bring things in harmony. When you go against love, unity, and so forth, you break away from the Father, and somehow by hearing the word, of Jesus, you go back into the path. Another very important part of Gnosticism is, you can see it a bit in the Gospel of John, which it's about 90, 100, 110 AD. There are different ideas about that, the original date, but it came in a very Gnostic area of Egypt. So it was quite filled with Gnostic concepts. And so one first step to understand Gnosticism is I and the Father are one. And in Gnosticism, that I and the Father are one, you have to understand that later on it says, and I want you as well to partake of that, meaning that oneness, you can find it within you. So I am telling you, not that I and the Father are one, I'm God and you are not, and you're low down there, and you have to rely on my sacrifice and I have to do it for you. What is saying that I and the Father are one, and I want to show you the way in which you can be one. So there can be that oneness. So a lot of the path of Gnosticism is about that oneness. When you merge with that love, with that presence. And it's not so much about books, about doctrines, it's not about faith, it's about the opening of the heart, and it's about a merger. That is very important. Okay, let's now get into some other key concepts. I'm not going to use some of the more complex words like pleroma and ions and so forth. We'll be looking at quite a few writings of Gnosticism, so let's start from a simple way. Now, the highest stage of realization is to realize the absolute, the pleroma. And I talked about it in my understanding of my studies in physics, that at the end of the day, everything is energy. It really is. It's quantum energy. So it seems that everything merges from there, everything is a manifestation of it, and everything goes back. And so universes can come from that dimension, from that origin, but universes also go back to it. And there is an hypothesis that I like very much, that there are many universes. But when you take the energy, some plus, some minuses of all the various universes, it becomes zero. It becomes, they balance each other out. So all along, although these energies got everything in it, it is totally self-relying, self-contented, and it is pure fullness. So it's empty of separation, of misunderstanding, of forms, of craving, but it is totally complete because everything is within it. It is considered that Gnosticism is very much part of what was a deeper spiritual understanding, which was worldwide. In India you had the Vedantins, you had some schools of Buddhism, in Islam you had Sufism and so forth, which talks a lot about this oneness. So in the most important Vedic writing, which to me is the Isa Upanishad, you have this verse that starts the Isa Upanishad along the lines that everything is the absolute, meaning it's just one energy. Whatever you take out of it, meaning whatever you create from it, it still remains the absolute. Okay? It's within it. Whatever you take out of it, or after you take it out, you put it back, meaning that universe disintegrates and goes back, it still remains the same. So knowing that that is your true nature, be happy, because you have everything is within you. So the Gnostics were very close to that concept. So you have this absolute. So it's totally inner peace, inner contentment, and self-realization. It's just peace. Pure peace, silence. Peace and silence, when you have it within you, in the midst of everything that surrounds you. Now, from this absolute, you have what is called a quantum fluctuation, a wave that comes out. It's something stirs within it. And that used to be called, at the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Meaning that stirring, that movement, it still was within the absolute, and it was the absolute. All right? So that normally the mystic feels it as a tremendous sense of love, completely exhausting, where everything, by exhausting, not that it tires you, but it means it exhausts all other desires and all other needs. It's totally fulfilling. When you have that love, it is, you don't go looking too much for other things, because you have found your true home. So from this silence, from this total repose, this love arises. And this love starts manifesting. And that is one, nature, from more subtle levels to deeper levels, starts arising. And that is called in Gnosticism Sophia, which at the beginning is creative wisdom. And this creation, I call it sometimes the mother, but don't worry too much about father and mother, because some people might say, no, why you're saying father, why you say it is just for communication, okay? You can interchange the words and the meanings. So this mother arises from the beloved with the possibility of all creation, but is still part of the absolute in a different form. Now, what happens is this, that as the many forms are created, at different dimensions start to emerge, nature starts forgetting its origin. It starts becoming fascinated with what is being created. And it starts getting really drawn into it, sucked into it. And then this personality, this I comes out that forgets its origin. And that is, let's say, when Sophia, nature starts having the illusion that it is moving away from the divine, from its real source. And there, then, the act of creation is taken over by the demiurge. From Sophia, this demiurge comes out. It is this powerful being that is saying, worship me or else. I am a jealous God. You see, I am the true creator. And then all these universes, so forth, and all this creation starts coming out. Because we are born within this realm of Sophia, which has forgotten its origins, we suffer so much, and we are totally ruled by this I. But I'm talking of an ego that has forgotten its source. Yes? So this ego is attracted, if you think of a lake and little bubbles coming in it, different, and these are stories, emotions, feelings, desires. And this I, separated I, starts looking into that and starts getting fascinated. Oh, I want to be a millionaire. Oh, I want that woman. No, I want that one. I want this and I want that. I'm better than him. I'm better than that. Because this I can only nourish itself by possessing things, by having this, by taking from somebody else. It's forgotten that the love within is infinite. It's all possessing, But I think that all these external things are the ones that can give me that love, and they cannot, because they are limited. I'm not saying that you shouldn't want anything from outside, but you should learn, you should know your true nature and the limitations of things outside. So here we go. So this I is created, and there is hatred, there is greed, there is delusion, and we go from birth to birth, dictated by this hatred and delusion within us, and this greed. So at one point there could be the beloved the love that comes from the absolute, manifests on earth, and that you could believe as a Gnostic, you could believe is particularly Jesus, but you could say also is anyone that has remembered this true essence, which is the love, the beloved, and can help you to remember it too. So there can be someone like that that can awaken within you the memory of your true nature, of your true self. And he raises your gaze from all these bubbles you are attacked. This is me, 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 this is me. I want, I want, I want, I want, I want. I can get, I'm happy. I can't get, I'm unhappy. I love you, I hate you. Contraction. So the beloved that incarnates can at one point allow you to see at all these bubbles and suddenly go, wait a minute, this comes and goes, this comes and goes. But I am the awareness. You know, I'm just pure energy, pure being. I am not caught in that. And that is the Zen Buddhists, they call it the first stage of Satori, of awakening. You know, there is suddenly this explosion of, in a way, of joy. It's like, whoa, this is what I am, not this. Yeah? And from there is that going back. Oh, home, sweet home. You know, there's this amazing sense of love, of liberation, of belonging. And from there you can fall back to the absolute, the total rest. Okay, it has been done. I've got what I really wanted. Something that the world by itself cannot fulfill. Now, for example, Buddhists, they work a lot by you recognizing these trappings of the ego. Me, 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 me. Observing the ego, observing the hatred, observing the greed, observing the delusion, and gradually release them, so that then there is finally an awakening when you are ready. Early Christians spoke a lot as well by confessing your sins, you know, which was when you went against the word and teaching of Jesus and you were acting with hatred and arrogance, you know, Jesus was very much talking about that, be the last and so forth. We'll go into that. So once this awakening has happened, which could have been done from becoming aware of what traps you, or could also come, let's say, by the Gnostic way, that, as I said, as Christians they were looking, you know, don't do the things you hate, and which means which your spirit hates, which is to hate others and so forth, and be aware of that. But the other way of the Gnostics was, if you start the Gospel of Thomas, it starts by saying, the one who will understand the deeper meaning of these words I'm talking will know no death. Because when you're caught in all these bubbles, you know, they come, they go, there is life, there is death, and like that. But once you know yourself, you know that which is, and always is. So he uses phrases which, when you look at them normally, you think, what the heck is he talking about? You know, when he says, oh, you can realize your true nature when you make that which is above, you make it below, that which is below, you make it above, that which is outside, you make it inside, that which is inside, you make it outside, you know. And the person goes, what is this guy talking about? And by the way, we'll go through bits and pieces of the Gospel of Thomas. I don't understand it, inside, outside, above, below, but is that kind of inner realization when you begin to realize that you are pure being, pure energy, before creation. So there is no up, there is no below, there is no outside, there is not in. You know, it is just this sense of just being, you know, pure love, pure peace, whatever. So in Gnosticism they use a lot this thing of saying phrases which could start creating different levels of awakening, you know, because our true nature is there. So all you are doing with these phrases is you keep reminding that self, the true self, which has been so buried so deeply, you can remind it, it's who you truly are, and come out of it. Be free. Okay? So that's why the Gnostics were quite much, they were not very close to rituals, to hierarchies, you know, bishops and cardinals and all that kind of stuff. Women had equal rights. They were deacons, they were preaching, they were talking. Different people could lead a gathering. You know, it wasn't, that's it, the priest just stands in there and so forth. And most importantly, remember this, salvation was not by an external source, okay? There is no big deal about the resurrection, that the resurrection saves you. Somebody else dies and somehow you die because someone else did it. No, you have to die from within yourself. And that is a path that Jesus will help you to walk through. But it has to come from within. And it's from releasing that which you are not and discovering that which you truly are. I and the Father are one. And I want to conclude this talk by making things clear, because some people, they go, oh, you realize who you truly are. You are God, you are divine, you are this, you are that. Be very careful. Because from what we know, this experience of merging or awakening or so forth is very simple, is very sobering, is quite humble, and there isn't an I going, oh, now I am this, now I am that, because it means you have not understood anything at all. You know, it is, it really transcends your ego and your separation. And that's why very much, even in the Gospel of Thomas and in other Gospel, Jesus talks about becoming children again. It's a bit that simplicity, you know, and so you don't become God, a demiurge, creating universes or any stuff like that. You actually, if you go to any close to that experience, you become very childlike, very small. Okay? So, hope you have enjoyed it, and we will then take a little journey together through not only the official Gospels of Jesus, particularly Matthew and what his message really was, but more about the Gnostics and so forth. And perhaps we'll begin to realize that actually, if you take the Gospels of Jesus, not what Christians made of Christianity later on, but if you take the word in the Gospel, is not that separate from most of the Gnostic message. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.